welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Happy New Year. It has been a month since I last recorded because my toddler, my son, he had hand, foot, mouth, and he had RSV in the month of December. Plus, he was off of school for 2 weeks naturally because the holidays, right? And so, yes, it's been a while and it feels good to be back. And we have a lot to catch up on. A lot took place in the month of December. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to be catching up, and I have a lot of good news. Yeah, I mean, it's good news. It's kind of just like updates to what's been happening. Okay, the good news is I feel like I've been in this like cocoon, in this like death and rebirth cycle for quite some time. I've talked about this. I've said I feel like I'm going through this transformation. I just don't know what's next. And I've been in that phase for a few months where I was kind of like, I don't want to say graduating from my healing journey because that's like a lifelong journey, of course, but I had kind of moved away from that being the main focus. I knew that. And I was sort of in this in between of just like continuing to go or like continuing what I was doing in terms of like the podcast and TikTok and whatnot. I had started meditating and connecting to my higher self, but I didn't yet know what was coming next. Well, in the month of December, I feel like I broke out of that cocoon. I became a butterfly who flied, and sorry, my water is making some weird noises next to me. Anyways, I feel like I sprouted my wings and I'm flying, and more has been revealed, and I want to share with you all about that. Okay. What happened in the month of December? A few days before Christmas, I started channeling my higher self. And when I say I started channeling my higher self, what I mean by that is I'm going to share with you like the story and the experience and like what this felt like. But having my higher self speak through me, use my voice to speak through me. I know that in the spiritual space, channeling is talked about in a lot of different contexts, so I just want to be clear that this was my higher self speaking through me using my voice. Was I trance channeling? No, I was not in a trance state. I do feel like I was in an altered state, but not a trance state because I was still conscious and present in my body. So I would consider it more of like a conscious channeling. And I'll kind of get to, I'll get to the details, but it wasn't monologuing either. I've spent a lot of time listening to channeled content, and so I'm familiar. I have seen, a channeler be asked a question and then they can kind of like go off and monologue for like 2-3 minutes, 3-5 minutes and share a lot of wisdom. It wasn't that. I do believe that it will be that one day. I'm going to make an assumption here. But this experience was more so me sitting and asking questions in my head and then my higher self vocalizing the answer. And they were shorter and more brief answers. And I think that was because as soon as I realized I was speaking, my mind would quickly kind of like jump in and kind of get in the way. So yeah. So in this episode, I want to talk about how I believe I unlocked this, the experience itself, what that felt like. It was spontaneous, right? I wasn't attempting to do this. So like leading up to and the experience itself. And then I'm going to jump into some of the clues that I've had along the way over the last 2 years that, looking back in reflection, were kind of clues that we were leading here, that we were heading in this direction. Because I will say that there were several points along my journey where I stopped and asked myself, am I a channel? Am I going to channel one day? And there was even some resistance to moving forward on this path, thinking it might lead there one day. So I'll talk more about that as well, and just like what that resistance was, what that looked like. And then lastly, I want to jump into what's next. because I feel like I have more of the path revealed to me, and I do feel like I have tangible next steps, and that is what I have been working through over the last week or so. So, yes, let's jump right in. How did I unlock this ability? I don't know a better way to phrase that. I feel like unlock this ability doesn't feel quite right for me, but for lack of a better phrase, that's what we're working with. I believe how this happened, and I actually did receive confirmation that this was true while channeling. I finally unblocked my throat chakra. Yes, this is something that I have talked about for a long time. If anyone has listened to my podcast, has listened to me on TikTok, then you know that I have been working on clearing my throat chakra for over a year now. Very, very intentionally. I knew this was a major block. I've known this for a long time, and I knew this was important. So this is something that I have been focused on, and I finally unblocked it. And I'll share more with you about how I know that in a second. But I want to talk about why that matters. Why was this important? Why did this lead to channeling? And the reason is unblocking my throat cleared my channel. So if anyone is familiar with energy healing, anything in the intuitive space, really, anyone who works in the intuitive space, so people who are psychics, mediums, they are any intuitive energy healers, anyone who's working in the intuitive space, working with energy or connecting to energy, it is important for them to maintain a clear channel. So in the context of energy healing, let me paint a picture for you. So when you're working with energy and you're energy healing, you set the intention to open your crown, and then you call in the energy, and the energy travels in through your crown. You're not using your own energy, you're channeling energy, right? So it enters in through your crown and it travels down through your central column, meaning all of your chakras, your energy body. So your third eye, your throat, your heart, your solar plexus, sacral, and your root before moving to your hands. And when it travels down your central column, travels down your central channel, if you have any blockages, then that can introduce distortions, introduce projections, introduce maybe like blocks to clarity or a lack of clarity. So that is why it's so important to maintain a clear channel, especially if you're doing any sort of reading for people, right? You want to maintain a clear channel so that you are able to provide people with the most clear answers or the most clear guidance that you are able to, right? So that's why that is important. And I believe when I unblocked my channel, that just gave me this clear connection to be able to channel. So yeah, when you hear the term or the phrase clear channel, that's talked a lot about in the context of channeling, energy healing, and just any intuitive work. Also, just like a quick note, fun fact, I have noticed my intuition get stronger since this occurred. It's mostly been my inner knowing, my claircognizance that is just like over the last few weeks, just randomly just knowing things at random, not necessarily intentionally sitting down to do this, but just randomly throughout the day, just like knowing random things. Okay, so how did I unblock my throat chakra? I've talked a lot about how I was attempting to do this, especially like on the physical side, right? Like podcast, TikTok, right? That those are two platforms that I was showing up to and kind of giving me a space for self-expression, for speaking my truth. And that has had a huge impact. I'd say probably the most impactful out of everything, because after I started doing that consistently, I started to see other shifts, right? Like open and honest communication, my relationships just started to become easier and easier and easier, where in the beginning, I look back on past relationships that I've had, and that did not come naturally to me. When I look back at past relationships, there is such this like contrast to what I experience now and how I communicate now in relationships. There's just like, there has been such substantial growth that it's noticeable. So podcast, TikTok, but then also right? Showing up in life and having authentic, honest communication with the people around you. Those are all important in unblocking my throat chakra. And then on the energetic side, obviously I was doing a lot of energy work. I've been doing a lot of energy work on myself over the past year. And then I will say the shamanic journeys also played a huge role, and I felt very noticeable shifts through that. And when we were doing the shamanic journeys, it was working on a lot of past life healing in relation to my throat chakra, and also like inner child healing in relation to that. So I was kind of working on the, on the physical side, I was working on like, how can I show up now today and speak my truth? And on the energetic side, it was like, okay, now how can we clear all of this from the past as well? So both working together, and we finally got to a point where we cleared it. So now I want to talk about the actual experience itself, like what actually happened. And this kind of ties the unblocking the throat chakra into the experience of channeling itself. Okay, so a few days before Christmas, my husband and I sat down to have a very long conversation. I would say we talked for about 3 hours, and there had been things that we just hadn't been like completely just like open and forthcoming with each other, and we just like got everything out in the open. There was a lot we were also discussing about like my journey and quitting my job, and like so much of that and how that had played a role in sort of, I don't want to say like transforming our relationship, but how that was impacting our relationship. So the next day, I am sitting with a lot of that conversation, and I had been thinking to myself that day, wow, things would be so much easier if I sort of went back to the way things were. And he wasn't asking me to do that by any means, but there's a lot of challenge that comes with, and I do want to talk about this someday. Maybe one day he will agree to be on this podcast. I think he's open to it, to just like have a discussion about like navigating this journey while married, while in a relationship. Because what is challenging for us, or what is challenging about navigating a relationship during this time, is that you sort of see the world in two different ways, right? My husband sees the world in the exact same way that I used to see the world, right? It's very grounded, very like, you know, I don't even know how to name it, but just like, these are the things that we do to support our family, and we go to work, and we like, this is how money works. And like, it's, I want to call it normal, like, for lack of a better term, right? Like, that's just the way that you are taught, the way that the world works. And then me going on this journey, and then learning like the energetics, and learning how energy works, and becoming the creator of your reality, and sort of like doing the inner work to raise your frequency, to then change your exterior reality. It's just like a different way of thinking, and a different way of approaching life, and a different way of thinking about or viewing the world. And neither is right or wrong. I want to like be clear about that. They're just different. And so trying to like navigate these conversations about finances or work or raising children, just like anything of importance, we're now like looking at it through slightly different lenses. And then that can introduce challenge in just in the form of navigating the conversation itself, right? So that was a lot of what we were talking through, and from a place of love. But that was the conversation, right? And so the next day I was sort of thinking to myself, like, wow, this would be a lot easier if I just went back to how things were. And after more time thinking through, and I sort of landed at this decision of like, I choose to be my most authentic self, no matter what. I choose to be my most authentic self, no matter what. And for me, following this path is not, I think it can look like chasing a dream, but I don't view it as chasing a dream. I view it as choosing to be me. And when you make a decision energetically, that makes a difference. And so I believe that that is what, I mean, I believe I received confirmation that decision, I choose to be me, I choose to be my authentic self no matter what, unblocked my throat. So I would say I'd been thinking about it that day, and by dinner time, we were all sitting down to eat dinner, my husband, myself, and our son, and I had this wave of nausea come over me, and with that wave, this sort of surge of emotion, like I felt like I was going to cry, or I felt like I needed to cry. And so I asked my husband, like, can you take care of our son? I just need to, like, I need to take a moment. I think I need to do some somatic work. So I came to our room, my bedroom, sat in bed, and I was like, let me just do some somatic work. I set the intention, whatever my body needed, right? And I thought I was just gonna burst into tears, like I've done many times in the past while doing somatic work. And instead, my hands started moving and I started doing energy work. And I'm kind of sitting there thinking, like, when are we gonna get to the point of me crying? I think that's what I need. And we weren't. I was just sitting there doing energy work. And at one point, I got to my throat, and it was like my hands were doing this. Like, if you're listening on audio and you can't see, I'm sorry. But they were kind of just like, how do I explain this? It was like they were very intensely removing energy from my throat. So it was kind of like going like this and then like moving it up and out. And after that moment, I felt my energy shift. And what I mean by that is I felt myself move into an altered state. I've been trying to paint this picture for people, like friends who I've been telling this story to. So let me attempt to explain this shift into an altered state. Has anyone ever taken a gummy, a weed gummy of some sort? Okay, this altered state does not feel like I'm high or like on a weed gummy, but what I want to demonstrate is that sometimes, or maybe all the time, when you take a gummy, I've only done this like 3 times in my life, it doesn't sit well with my system, but I have tried it regardless, where you take the gummy and you're normal, you're fine, and then all of a sudden it just, with a snap of a finger, it hits you and your body feels different and you kind of like move into this altered state. So I just share that to demonstrate that wasn't the feeling I was having, but it was the snap of a finger, and now my energy has shifted and I'm in an altered state now. So obviously I was sober, but I could still feel that something was different. And in that moment I asked, am I about to channel? It was like there was an intuitive knowing. I just felt it. I was like, am I about to channel right now? And gosh, I'm like a little bit shaky as I'm telling this story. I hope the camera isn't like moving too much in front of me as my legs are a little bit shaky. Let's see. This is the part where it gets a little blurry. I was conscious during it, but it like the memory quickly faded after. I've heard people speak about channeling and even like conscious channeling, and it's kind of like you remember it right after and then it like fades quickly. It's kind of like a dream, and that's kind of what it feels like for me, where I'm like, I don't know really like what took place afterwards. I remember some of the key things that were said, which I won't share the messages here quite yet, but I do just want to share more about the experience. So I believe after I had the thought, am I about to start channeling? Oh, you know what? The first thing I did was I asked, is this energy of the highest light and love? Because, and then I had already cleared my space, but I think I cleared my space again, right? It was like just energy protection, like 101. Like, let's just make sure. And my head started moving like this. It was like a yes. Energy of the highest light and love. And after I received the yes, that confirmation, I sort of just started to like try to calm myself, to just like, don't be scared, Lisa, like this is okay, like you're fine. So I was just sort of like patting myself and like just trying to like I think my heart started like racing a little bit because you're exploring the unknown, right? Like I don't know what's about to happen. So I think it's normal to have been like a little bit nervous. And so I was just like, it's okay, Lisa, like you're fine. And then I think I just started to ask questions about like what I was experiencing. And I asked a yes or no question. I think I asked, am I channeling my higher self? And instead of my head nodding yes, I spoke out the words. And it was like my voice, but it was like not how I would normally say yes. Like I'd just say yes. But instead it was like a yes, 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 yes. It was like, do you get what I'm saying? It's like that's not how I would normally answer the question. And it wasn't until I was like answering and speaking that I was then processing like, oh, I'm speaking right now. Does that make sense? And then once I like my mind kind of stepped in, then it was like difficult to maintain. Oh my gosh, okay. I feel my hands moving up. There's like a lot of energy. Just me telling this story. Okay. I think I asked a few more questions and the same thing. I would start talking and then process that I was speaking. And then, so the answers were more short and brief because it was not long before my mind would kind of like interfere or get in the way. But the energy was so high frequency that my body, after a while, after a few minutes, was shaking. And it very much reminded me of like when I first unlocked, I guess, like my ability to do energy healing when I was doing somatic hypnotherapy, like that first time. And I was just like shaking. And this is normal because it's a very high frequency energy and your physical body has to attune to that. So a lot of people who channel speak a lot about experiencing a lot of movements in the beginning as energy is sort of like, yeah, attuning, or I guess your body is attuning to the energy. And it was really intense. It wasn't scary by any means. It was just like strong. And so I think after about like 10 or 15 minutes, I was like, okay, I need a break. And so I simply asked, like, how do I do this again? And the answer I got was to simply set the intention and open, and which, like, yeah, that makes sense. And then from there, I set the intention to close my channel and I started to ground myself. So for me, that looks like picturing or visualizing tree roots kind of extending out from my legs and like anchoring me to the ground. And then immediately after that, I'm like, am I forgetting anything about the channeling itself? The one piece that I didn't mention is the throat chakra. So I think I asked how I was able to do this. And I believe my hands came to my throat and I asked, did I unblock my throat chakra? And I got a yes. And then I think I asked, like, how did I unblock my throat chakra? And the answer that I got was, you said you no matter what. You said you choose to be you no matter what. And then we're so proud, we're so proud, we're so proud. That's the answer that I was hearing. So okay, is that all I want to say? Like my memory is so hazy from this session. Okay, is there anything else? Okay, I believe that was it. That was like pretty much all I wrote down as I'm looking at my notes. Okay, so then I grounded my energy and then I walked out. And the first thing that I did, my husband was washing dishes. And I look at him and I was like, I think I started channeling. And he looks at me like, oh my gosh, who did you channel? And I was like, I think I just channeled myself. I channeled me, my soul, my higher self. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm so glad that I have spent years listening to channeled content and then sharing that with my husband because that prepared him to be able to receive that and be like, okay, yeah, no big deal, Lisa. I think that if I was like, hey, I started channeling and I was channeling like a different energy that than was mine, that may have taken a little bit longer to process. But because I was channeling my higher self, it's like a nice little ease into channeling, right? It's just I'm talking to me. It's me coming through me. So what was really interesting is the next day, how I felt afterwards, after having this experience. I felt like I was grieving. which is really interesting. And I don't want to read into that too much. My conclusion, I was kind of just like letting myself feel whatever I needed to feel, but my conclusion is that I've been through this like death and rebirth cycle that I mentioned in the beginning. And I feel like this was kind of like the culmination of all of that transformation. And part of a death and rebirth cycle is a death, right? And it was like letting go of this old version of me. And with that, I think it's natural for there to be some mourning. So I just allowed myself to feel whatever I needed to feel. And then that weekend, I got to be in community with two people who are my previous coworkers who I worked with for like 8 years and also happen to be in the spiritual space, are very familiar with channeling. They have family members who do it. They grew up in this space. And one of the girls actually experiences intuition and energy, like aside for the energy healing, but like experiences intuition in the same way I do. A lot of like body movements, head nodding for yes, shaking for no. Like she experiences that very similarly to me. And so it was very, I'll say like helpful and validating to, just a few days after having this really big experience to then go be in community with them and share and to just feel so much like love and acceptance and like complete lack of judgment for everything that I was experiencing. And in contrast, it was not even just acceptance, it was like excitement for me of like, oh my gosh, Lisa, like how cool is this, right? So that was beautiful. And I think that kind of like worked out perfectly and in divine timing, right? Like, I don't think that was by coincidence that happened that way because, regardless of like how beautiful this experience is and how excited I am to explore this, it's still like a lot to process, right? It can still be like a large change. And with that, it's really helpful to have people who can sort of like sit with you through that change and be there for you through that. So very, very, very thankful for that. Okay, so now I want to talk about some of the clues that I've had over, I don't know, the last 2 years, I would say, that we were leading here. I had enough clues, like I mentioned in the beginning, to actually believe or have an assumption that we were leading here. And I think because it hadn't happened, I was like, oh, maybe that's not part of the path. But early on, I even had resistance to continuing on this path out of fear that it would lead here. So I'll talk through like that resistance as well. I even remember when I had an astrology session way back when, before I joined my mentorship program, and this was kind of like the catalyst that got me to commit to the mentorship program in the first place. I remember telling her, I think I'm going to channel. And when she kind of like laid everything out of like it's written in the stars, not the channeling piece, but just like this path for you, I was like, okay, I'm going to stop fighting it. And so I did. And then I did the mentorship program. And the mentorship program actually did talk a lot about channeling. So that was part of it. And I think that was good for me to have that foundational knowledge, like energy protection and to just we talked about being a clear channel, a lot of that, right? That was a good foundation for me to have. And to be honest, I really loved the idea of channeling. Like when I would think about like me being able to channel, that was exciting, but the resistance came in when I started to think about how will others perceive me and how will others receive this? Because to someone who is, again, normal, for lack of a better term, like that can be a lot to process. That can be kind of like I do not understand that. And I understand that because I've had conversations with people about this and I see their response. And also I'm aware of my response when I was first introduced to this. Like when I first introduced myself to this, because I started listening to Christine the Channel, her podcast. But when I first heard her speak about this, I was like, there's no way that that's real. There's no way that that's true. So I understand. And because I understood that, it was like, I think I would really be excited to do that, but I think that would cause me to lose friends in my life, and so maybe I don't want to do that. So the resistance to it was all about the perception how others would perceive me. And I think that, unblocking my throat chakra and that being like my main work has gotten me to this point where now I'm like, we're sitting about it. We're sitting here talking about this on a podcast, and I'm going to share this with everyone. And, maybe some people won't be accepting of this. And like that is what it is. That's just, I'm not saying that won't hurt my feelings, but I now have the tools to be able to navigate, continuing to move forward regardless of how I am being perceived. So to the signs, to the clues, what were the signs? Well, I have my list here on my phone. First, I'll just say my interest in channeling. I was listening to channeled content for probably 2 years consistently, like before I ever discovered any of my own spiritual gifts. And I think I first heard about channeling while I was still pregnant. Yes. And so I had like this fascination with it and this desire to continue to listen to channeled content. It was like sitting in the frequency of that. I gravitated to it. And I also, when I was hearing the messages, it was just like everything made sense to me. It was like I could receive that. It would click. It was like these light bulb moments. So I really, really resonated with channeled content for a long time. Even in the beginning, I'll say, even when the first time I listened, I was like, I don't know if I believe this to be true. But regardless of what I believed about the act of channeling itself, the messages that were coming through, I did immediately resonate with. And I have heard people say that if you have a large interest in channeling, it may be because you are meant to do this as well, or maybe because you have the ability to do this as well. And I won't get into like everybody can channel to varying degrees. Like we won't go there. I'm just talking about like this specific channeling and people having said that before. Also, just like the online mentors in the intuitive space that I have gravitated towards and resonated with have all been channels, or they call them like channelers, but like, yes, intuitive channels. They have all channeled. Those are the ones that I have always gravitated towards. There are many different types of people who work in the intuitive space in just like varying capacities, but for some reason, the ones I have always gravitated to are people who channel. Also, my obsession with QHHT sessions by Dolores Cannon, her method. There's a specific QHHT practitioner who shares her sessions with permission of her clients on YouTube, and they're like 2 to 3 hours long. And I have listened to so many. When I was still working, I would just have them playing in the background because that's what I was interested in listening to. And in those QHHT sessions, people, just like regular people, go down into a state of hypnosis and they begin to channel their higher selves. Once you get them into a deep enough state of trance, everyone is able to channel their higher selves. And so the QHHT practitioner will ask questions and then the higher self will answer. And the people who are in the session may or may not have memory of this portion, but it's always recorded and they can play it back and listen to the guidance or the messages or the answers that their higher self is giving them through that session. So I was always like fascinated with this. And I think that now me being able to channel my higher self, I'm like, oh, this is wonderful, because I have always been fascinated by the wisdom and the guidance and the answers and the solutions all shared when you're able to tune into your higher self. So that's another one. I guess one of the biggest clues is the way that I experience energy healing, the way that I channel energy and then it moves my hands. That is channeling. Whether you channel through your voice or you channel through your hands, when they are moving on their own, I am channeling energy. And it was funny because when I first started experiencing this, even though I went to, go get properly trained in Reiki, like no one else was having this experience that I was having where my hands were moving on their own. And so I was like searching the internet, I was scouring. I was like, I don't even know how to search this. Like Google hands moving on their own during meditation. And I would find things like yoga mudras. And that was like the closest thing. But I was like, that's not really what I'm experiencing. The one time that I was able to find people talk about this was people who channel, like trance channels or even like conscious channels. Like they talked about having early experiences of channeling energy through their hands and their hands moving. And so that got me thinking of like, oh, maybe that's the next evolution of what I'm going to be doing. Also, my whole healing journey being about regulating my nervous system, right? Like that's something that's always talked about when we are talking about channeling, because as I mentioned, like uh having such high frequency energy being channeled through your body, like your physical body needs to be able to hold that. And you have to have a regulated nervous system. Otherwise, it would like fry you. It would burn you out. Like it just, you would not have the capacity to do that. So to have spent the last year regulating my nervous system, I'm sure also played a role in being able to do that. And I'm being told like what's moving forward, what's coming is increasing my energetic capacity. So it's like, I said after 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, I was like, I think I'm done. I'm a little bit like my body's overwhelmed. I need to like take a break. So being able to hold that energy for longer is about increasing your energetic capacity, maintaining a regulated nervous system, and just practicing. That's like all you can do. You practice, and that is what gradually increases your capacity. Yeah, I said the whole healing journey being about the nervous system, also unblocking my throat, clearing my channel. All of that is important for energy healing, and that's what I was kind of thinking that this was about, but this is also all important for channeling as well. I guess because at the end of the day, it's the same thing. You're channeling energy, whether that energy is coming through your hands or coming through your voice, it's channeling energy. And then a few messages that I have gotten, whether in meditation or just kind of like out and about through my day. One time I was meditating and I got the message that my voice carries healing frequencies and that I need to speak. Actually, a week before I channeled for the first time, I did get the message that I was going to be channeling my higher self. Yeah, I forgot. I wrote that down. So maybe it wasn't like entirely an intuitive knowing when I felt that altered state. Like I forgot I was told that I was going to be channeling my higher self. And then like early on in my journey, this is like just like a kind of like a funny one, but it always stuck with me. There was this song that I learned, a children's song. It's how does it go? It says, these little eyes of mine, I'm gonna let them shine, let them shine, let them shine, let them shine. And then you kind of go through, you say like this little voice of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, I'm gonna let it shine. So I used to sing that to my son, and there was this one time where he was crying in his car seat in the car, and I couldn't attend to him because I was driving. So I started singing to him, because when I used to start singing to him, he would calm down pretty quickly, and I started singing that song. But I'm kind of driving, right? And you like know the words by heart. So you kind of like zone out a little bit. I start thinking about other things as I'm singing and I'm driving. And then I kind of like pop back in and realize what I had been singing is those little words of mine, I'm going to let them shine. And I was like, oh, why was I singing that? And then I was kind of like, oh, I feel like that's a message. I feel like there's something important about my words. And I mean, I guess that could tie into like the importance of me speaking in order to clear my throat chakra. But yeah, there was this knowing that there was something important about me speaking my words and something about what I had to say. So those are the clues that I wrote down that we were leading here. And then lastly, I want to talk about what's next. So as I said, a lot has happened. A lot has been revealed. I unblocked my throat. I started channeling, and a few days after that, I got the message that it was time to go back to work. And initially, I thought that this was about going back to a 9 to 5 so that I could like have some stability, start to make money again, and then in the side, like in my spare time, start to work on increasing my energetic capacity and training this new skill and all of that. No. The message was actually, it's time to go back to work, and it is time to start energy healing. That is the work. That is the work that I need to be doing. So it all is kind of like unfolding. Like I believe that the reason it's time to go back to work now, or I should say that now I get to start energy healing, is because I unblocked my throat. I cleared my channel. I feel like I'm talking too fast right now. The words are having trouble leaving my mouth. I cleared my channel, which means I can now approach energy healing and offer this as a service to people. So not only did unblocking my throat give me access to this new gift, but also it prepared me to be ready to start energy healing. So that has been in the works over the last week. I have been just like doing all the administrative stuff on the back, filing for an LLC, like preparing the different platforms that I'm going to be using for scheduling, just like everything behind the scenes necessary to create your own business. So I have been putting all of that together, and once that is all approved, then I will start sharing the link to allow people to start scheduling. I have always said that when it's time to start energy healing, I will know. Because the number one question I get asked, I uncovered this beautiful gift, energy healing, my hands move on their own. I know that I was meant to share that with people, but I always knew it wasn't time yet. And I've said, when it's time, I'll know. And now it's time. And it kind of all fell into place. Like the funny thing is, when I was having conversations with my husband about like going back to work, because my plan was never to be not making money for a long time, right? Like I want to make money. I want to contribute to my household. And so I'd been telling my husband for months now, I was like, if this needs to take longer, obviously I wasn't going to just start energy healing for money. I wanted to do it when I was being intuitively guided to do it. So I was like, whatever my path is, if that's not revealed to me by January, then I'm going to start looking for a job in January. So I had this timeline of January, and then I would think about the job market, and I was like, people are having a hard time finding a job. Maybe I should start looking before January. And every time I thought maybe before January, it was like, no. Like my intuition said, no, wait until January. So like logically, that probably doesn't really make sense, but following my intuition, it was like, no, I need to wait until January. And then all of this gets revealed, and then I get the message, it's time to go back to work, start energy healing in January. So do you guys see how everything is just falling into place? Like I unlocked this gift of energy healing, then I spend a year healing. That healing is very specific. It is serving a purpose. It is clearing my channel, even though I'm not entirely aware that that's what I'm doing while I'm doing it. Regulating my nervous system, unblocking my throat, I'm clearing my channel. How do I unblock my throat? I create a podcast and I create TikTok. Great. Now that it's time to start energy healing, I have an audience that I can offer that to. I'm not starting from scratch. And all in a divine timing where I said January is when it's time to start making money, and that is exactly what is going to play out. So yeah, I just want to remind everyone that how I got here was by setting logic aside and following my intuition. That is how everything is playing out. So where I'll leave you with is, what's next for channeling, right? Like I unlocked this ability, and like, what's next? Well, will I be bringing it to public spaces? No. When it's time to share, I'll know. So I'm sure there's a lot of like knowledge to be gained, mentorship. I'm sure that there is training and, again, increasing my energetic capacity. There's a lot to take place before I bring that to, I was going to say the world, public spaces, and anywhere else. So that is, I'm sure, what I'll be spending some time working on the side. I want to approach that with the utmost integrity. That is a priority for me. That is very important to me. So if you have stuck around to listen to this entire episode, thank you. And I will see you all again soon. Bye.